In this video, I'm going to show you how I fixed the steering on my Model T with a penny. Yep, I spent 1 cent and fixed a real problem in my car's steering. It's easy to do and it works wonders. But before I show you how I did that, I got to thinking, what other Model T problems could I solve just by using a copper penny? Those penny tricks I showed you in the intro, they're all bogus, of course. Just some movie magic to get your attention. Let me be clear. Do not drop a penny into your radiator, your oil filler, your gas tank, nor your steering gear. But seriously, I'm going to show you how I actually did fix my Model T with a penny. Honestly, no joke. I really did fix my car with a penny. Like the boy who cried wolf, now I'll have trouble getting you to believe me. Trust me, now I'll show you how I fixed my Model T steering with a penny. I noticed my steering was getting really sloppy. It was clear I needed to fix this before it became worse. Besides distracting from the joy of driving this glorious antique car, it could be a sign of imminent steering failure, which could lead to a very bad day. I don't want to risk my life or anyone else's, that's for sure. The steering system in a Ford Model T is simple, crude even, and it's prone to wear and loosening with use. It's been 3 years since I did a full restore on my steering system. At that time, I needed to remove the steering column, remachine it, rebush it, and tighten the rivets in the steering box, and a bunch of other stuff. I did that steering column restoration before I drank the YouTube Kool-Aid, so I didn't make a video about it, unfortunately. Sorry, I'll try to make up for that today in some small way with this video. As I was saying, my steering was getting sloppy, loose, I guess. I guess I should try to be more clear. The steering had a lot of free play or backlash. This is hard to explain more clearly. Let me try and show you. See this? The steering wheel moved this much without turning the wheels at all. All this motion is free play or backlash. It's little clearances and gaps between each moving part in the steering system, added together to generate this amount of total backlash. I'm going to use the terms slop, free play, backlash, looseness, all interchangeably. They all mean the same thing, sorry. Here's a quantified measurement of it. It's got 1.5 inches or 38 millimeters of backlash. That's way too much. 3 years ago, I had things beautifully adjusted and only had 5/16 of backlash. That's only 8 millimeters. Let me show you how close I got to that low backlash utopia again, using a penny and 1 or 2 other simple methods as need be. To find the backlash in your steering system, you need to rhythmically load the steering left, then right, then left, then right, back and forth over and over again, while carefully and methodically watching each of the connection points in the car, looking at the movement and looking for any perceptible free play. If you haven't got a helper to work the steering wheel back and forth for you, you can do it yourself with some rope or string or twine. The steering backlash is a chain of potential free play sites and all must be checked. Steering wheel on steering wheel shaft must be 0. Steering wheel shaft in housing bushing. Gears within the steering box. Steering gearbox housing attachment to the steering column must be 0. Steering shaft in the steering column bushing. Pitman arm on the steering shaft must be 0. Pitman ball in the socket. Steering rod ball in the socket. Tie rod ends. Kingpins and kingpin bushings. Those are all the possible causes of backlash. All must be checked. All should be 0 or near 0 perceptible free play. A tiny amount of clearance at a few different sites will add up to too much sloppiness at the steering wheel. Alright, I found my backlash this time was mostly coming from 2 places. The steering gearbox to steering column connection and the pitman ball and socket. I did find a little play in the kingpins and in one of the tie rod ends, but the play in these 2 areas was slight and I decided that fixing those would need to wait for another time and maybe another video. This time I was going to focus on the 2 worst areas only, the pitman ball and socket and the steering gearbox rivet to the steering column. I wanted to measure quantitatively the amount of backlash in my steering system. Then, after my fixes, I could measure again to see how much of an improvement I'd made. I measured the total backlash by marking a line on the steering wheel which indicates the total amount of backlash and measuring its length. Just prop a pen into a fixed position and wiggle the free play in the steering wheel back and forth. When I measured it this time, it was 1.5 inches. Even in the metric system, that's a lot. Too much. On a Model T, the steering gear is here right at the steering wheel, not down at the lower end of the steering column like most cars. This is a weak link in the design, really. The steering gearbox housing is riveted to the steering column with 2 very long rivets. Over time and millions of steering force inputs, this riveted joint gets loose. A large part of my current backlash is caused by the steering box moving relative to the steering column. I've got to tighten these 2 rivets. There's no pennies involved in this repair step. We will get to the penny fix, I promise. Now, a retightened steering column rivet is only a temporary fix. I first tightened them 3 years ago, and now they need tightening again. This time they may only hold for a few months or a year. Next time, who knows? When the retightening of these rivets isn't holding anymore, a much more thorough fix is needed, like drilling them out, re-reaming the holes, and installing new oversized rivets. For now, I hope my re-riveting will hold. Riveting works much better when you've removed the steering column from the car, but I'm not going to do that thorough of a repair this time. Now for the penny fix, I promise. I found a lot of free play in the pitman arm, ball and socket. This is a typical wear point for these steering systems, and it often wears here faster than other places. The pitman ball and socket wear manifests itself in a number of ways. The pitman arm ball end wears down from the original 1-inch diameter sphere, eventually forming a terribly worn egg shape. The cap or the socket can also wear. How do you know how much wear you've experienced? Well, one way is to measure the ball at several places. It should measure 1 inch in diameter anywhere you measure it since it's a sphere. Mine is measuring about 0.95 inches, and it hasn't become too misshapen. So the ball is 50 thou undersized. That's 0.002 millimeters under on diameter. And there might be some wear in the cap or socket too. That's more difficult to measure. Here we'll just focus on the ball, and any socket wear will get addressed as we go. This is your reminder to disassemble, clean, and re-grease the Pitman ball socket more often than you do. What are the fixes for this, you might ask? And where does the penny come into the picture? Hang on, we're getting there. Of course, if you're made of money and aren't unreasonably fixated on restoring or repairing these original old parts like some lunatics are, then you can just go out and buy new old stock or new reproduction Pitman arms and caps. Or you could remanufacture the Pitman arm ball by building it up and then remachining the sphere. I'm actually working on that with the help of my brother, but that will be a separate video. It involves 3D scanning, buying a used welder, and some strange machining techniques. Be sure to watch for a separate video in the future. Congratulations on making it into the video this far. I'm finally going to show you how to use a penny to fix the Pitman arm ball and socket wear. I'm sure by now you've figured out that I'm going to make a copper shim from a copper penny and use it to tighten up the clearances. Now, of course, you could buy the shims from a Model T vendor. There's nothing wrong with that. But making your own shims from a penny, come on, that's pretty cool. It must be said that shimming is a temporary fix. It's much better and safer than leaving the backlash in the ball and socket joint, but eventually the parts will need to be replaced or remanufactured. It's easy enough to figure out what thickness the shim or shims need to be. In this case, I need one shim at less than 50 thou or two shims at less than 25 thou each. Interestingly, my penny was 55 thou thick before forming, so I was hoping it would do the trick. You can't use just any penny. You need copper pennies. Newer pennies aren't copper. The last year of copper Canadian pennies is 1996. The last year of copper US pennies is 1982. Don't try this with non-copper pennies. Which are better, Canadian pennies or United States pennies? Well, Canadian pennies are better, obviously. Our goal here was to form the penny into a spherical shim of a thickness less than 50 thou. I guessed that a single 30 thou shim would take up most of the wear in my case, at least for now. A quick metallurgy lesson. Two technical terms to understand: annealed and work hardened. Copper work hardens naturally at room temperature. That means as it is formed or stressed at normal room temperature, it becomes harder and harder until it reaches its hardened state. Even at rest, long enough at room temperature, it will harden. High temperatures will anneal the copper, making it soft and pliable. 400 degrees Celsius, that's 750 Fahrenheit, is sufficient for annealing, and that's easy to achieve with a propane torch. Just heat the penny until it changes to a consistent dull glow, and then it's ready to be formed. Hammer it flat to thin it out, and then hammer it into a spherical pocket. If you don't have a die, you can use the concave end of the steering rod and the round end of a ball peen hammer, for example. Chinesium jewelry dapping blocks are fairly inexpensive to buy too. Looks like I got my penny down to about 33 thou. Guess that would be about right. After forming, you don't need to harden the copper again. It will naturally harden just fine. I've installed it on the steering rod side, not the cap side, since the cap is a lot easier to adjust or replace. Now let's see what kind of total backlash we've got. .3/16 of an inch, or 5 millimeters in communist units, as Randall from Shed by the Tracks calls them. That is a result.
Hi there. My name's Randall. I'm the host of Shed by the Tracks, a YouTube program that is seen around the world by tens of people every week. Every day, many of my fellow Americans tune into their favorite Canadian car show, not knowing the risk to their mental health. The use of kilos and meters is just a slippery slope to full-blown communism. Remember, friends don't let friends watch Canadian YouTube car channels. Thank you for your time. Cheers. What? Well, what'd I say? Oh, man.
That is a result. And you can make a shim from any copper or brass that you have at hand. I tried making one from the brass key tag blanks I use for the key tags I make to sell on my merch store. This is a shameless self-promotion. And it worked just fine too. Be careful installing shims. If the cap doesn't close completely on the steering arm without forcing, then the shim or shims are too thick. Don't leave a gap, and don't force the cap to bend over while tightening. If your pitman ball or the caps are too worn, don't try to fix it with shims. How worn is too worn? You'll have to decide for yourself. But I wouldn't shim it if the balls are under 0.9 inches, and I wouldn't shim it if it's obviously egg-shaped. It needs to still be pretty much a sphere. Did I mention that you need to disassemble, clean, and re-grease your pitman ball socket more often than you do? Well, you do. It's a high wear point in your steering system, and check it often, especially when you start to notice any more play in the steering wheel than usual. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. It helps this channel more than you know, and it costs you nothing. Speaking of costs, it costs real money to keep a channel like Flivver Channel going, and I really want to thank my viewers who have purchased things on my merch store or have made donations. Thank you, it really helps. This is Steven from Flivver Channel signing off.